We are Travis and Margaret Stewart. We are from Provo, Utah. We've been married 33 years, and we have 6 children, 2 grandchildren. And we're kind of thrilled to be here to tell our story. At the same time, we're a bit terrified. But I don't know, I think we feel strongly enough that, man, we got to talk about this, because personally I can't bear the thought that there might be anybody out there who maybe's been through what I've been through, or maybe still going through what I'm going through, and that they might be alone in that, because, man, I was really alone. And in this day and age, we can't be alone. Can't be alone. So might be helpful for me to talk a little about how this all got started for us, and particularly me. I am the one that is same-sex attracted in our marriage. I grew up in a non-traditional family, let's say, a really great family. I'm the 6th son of 6 boys and 2 younger sisters, so 8 kids in total. But from an early age, I realized that I was different in my family, different from my siblings, especially different from my brothers. We're all very close in age, but growing up, I realized I wasn't like them. And it was in really interesting ways. I was much more sensitive. I thought probably more about the worries and needs of others, where I think they were kind of more the typical rambunctious, crazy, energetic boys. Sometimes it played out in really interesting ways. For example, I loved the little birds. I loved the little animals. I wanted to talk to them, play with them, help them, heal them. My brothers wanted to kill them, destroy them, shoot them, Guns were scary. Guns were evil. My brothers loved guns. They couldn't shoot enough animals or shoot each other or me enough. And growing up on a farm, we had a lot of chores, a lot of work to do. And I think we just approached everything with different kind of feelings, different kinds of attitudes. For me, my realization that I was different from my brothers, and maybe even other people around me, it was probably more noticeable in my family, but kind of began to change and morph in a way that surprised me. When I was about 12 or 13 years old, I was on a Little League football team. My uncle coached Little League football, and I was a big kid, and he recruited me to come and play, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And this one particular summer between my leaving elementary school and the summer before beginning junior high on this Little League football team, there was a player on the team that I suddenly developed this crush for. I mean, I use the word crush because I don't know what else really it was. And I think at the time I didn't even know what it was. He was somebody that I just wanted to be around. I wanted to be friends with. I wanted to know. He was very handsome. He was beautiful. He was a very great athlete. And I was just really drawn to that. In a way, I'd say I was kind of obsessed with him a bit. It was really confusing. And I didn't know really what to do with it. It was sometimes a little alarming, but other times it was just really exciting. I kind of just didn't really say anything. What do you do? And kind of continued forward. We got into junior high school, and we continued to play football on the same team together. And I think that was always still kind of there. And I think other boys in my life would kind of come in and out of that same kind of feeling of crushes or of noticing that they were handsome. About I think the summer between my 7th and 8th grade year, I remember learning about this kid at school who was a year older than I was. And he was gay. I don't think he was openly gay, and we didn't have the term gay back then. It was
or openly gay.
Or openly gay. It was much less desirable types of words. And everybody knew about him. And I wasn't quite really sure. Growing up on a farm, we were pretty isolated. I really was pretty ignorant or innocent, I'm not sure which, but to a lot of things. You'd think even with older brothers that I would have known more, but I think we were all pretty ignorant together. And so I really didn't know or had terminology or understanding for what was happening or going on around me. But I remember people talking about him, and the way they talked about him, I recognized that there was something in me that was kind of like him. And that was really alarming. And I need to make sure that nobody can ever know anything about this with me. Which really began a really pretty painful and terrifying journey for me. And I was just a kid, maybe 13, 14 at the time, and just going, not sure what to do with this. And of course I can't talk about it, so I just did the best I could with it. And unfortunately, the best I could do was to try and deny it or try and not believe it. What this really started for me was a huge journey in shame and in denial. So immediately I think I began to adopt this, what do I need to do so that nobody figures this out? And so, of course, distance myself from this event, from this individual, or anything that might look like that. I began to become aware of, how am I talking? How am I dressing? How am I walking? What am I saying? What am I looking at, not looking at? Where might be places that people might perceive in the slightest degree anything about this? And man, when you're in junior high, you're crazy anyway. Everybody's crazy. But holy cow, this was crazy on steroids. I remember this will be a surprise to probably all the kids who grew up with me going through school, because I think on the surface I looked like the kid that had it all together. And that was carefully orchestrated to look like I had it all together, because inside I didn't. And between a lot of the chaos at home that kind of through high school and culminating about my junior high kind of exploded in my family, I was alone in this issue of, which just kept growing, your sexuality is developing, you're starting to look, it's, now everybody's talking about sex or talking about girls, and I'm not getting it, I'm not understanding it, I'm not feeling it, and kind of trying to be in this denial mode, but at the same time, it's harder to push the denial thing, because this obviously is growing to be more likely and more real than going away. And so I just had to keep upping whatever I could do, and a big part of coping for me was just stay busy, have something to do, fill every waking moment with something to do so that you don't have to be alone in your head with this. And so, man, I jumped into everything. I got involved in everything I could get involved with at school, everywhere, in the community, trying to be busy. In my home, part of my coping was the fixer. I was the adult in the kid body. I was the fixer at home, In my home, I knew I had this sensitivity to everybody's emotion, everybody's feelings, everything that was going on. And I kind of internalized a lot of that. I was out to fix everything and take care of everybody. My parents got in a fight, quick, I'd clean the house, mop the floors, because that would make it better. If there was struggles within siblings or with problems, it was quick, do this for them, do this nice thing. I was concerned about my younger sisters, and I became more of a fatherly type brother than just a brother. And I think I worried more about them getting to school and getting homework done than probably my parents worried about that. I just kind of took all that on myself. Nobody did anything to me. I just did it to myself. I was just a kid. I was just a kid trying to cope, trying to make the best of what was going on with me, and assuming that's what everybody else is doing.
Which is probably at this point an important thing to point out, that one of the things we've learned in the last few years in this journey together, talking about what does this mean and reconciling this, is coming to understand that as you're growing up, you adopt certain beliefs and meaning about what your story is. What does it mean that I feel this? What do I believe about that? I believe that it is bad to be this. Therefore, that belief goes in you and you start acting in ways that plays out in your life. And how one of the major works we've had to do in our marriage and in our own personal lives is to challenge the beliefs that were formed at a very early age about what it means to be this, or this. For example, you can appreciate that for me when he expressed to me that sweet morning that he experienced same-sex attraction. What does that mean? So what is that going to look like now for us? And it was a major work for me, as well as for him, to challenge the beliefs about what does that mean and what's that going to look like. So as you're listening to his story or our story, I feel like that is one of the major themes that has come forward. What do we believe about our story? And how, when we get it off or wrong, what kind of chaos it creates in us. Like, for example, to believe that being same-sex attracted can only mean one thing. I'm attracted to a member of my same sex, and if I'm going to be honest and if I'm going to be authentic, the only choice I have is to be sexually with that woman for me. And if I'm not true. Now that's a belief. It doesn't make it true. For some people, they're still trying to figure that out, and we would never put our story on somebody else and say, look, this is us, and so it should be you, because that, we know more than anything, everybody's just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, so in this journey, one of the ways of adopting maybe some bad coping was, being left alone in my head, is I began to think that somehow I had done this to myself. I had made myself gay. Maybe I thought too much, maybe I looked too much at boys, maybe I wondered too much, but somehow I had done this to myself. And so I adopted this idea that I was bad. I am bad. And that just grew. That just grew and grew. Now, I wasn't raised in the church, didn't go to church, but the time I finished high school and moved off to college, I began to become active in the church. And at the time, it was just a huge blessing for me. It was like this thing that I could grab a hold of that made sense. And it gave meaning and purpose to the chaos in my life, of my family, and on these other things. And it gave me hope about a future. And I think a lot of it was tied to, this is chaos going on here, but this is what I could have. And I think the gospel plan of family and marriage and children just really appealed to me. I really craved and desired to have that kind of an experience in my life. And there were some examples around me that really gave me hope. And as I learned more about the gospel, became more involved in the church, I met a lot of really excellent, wonderful examples of people who were just really good and doing good things. And it was like, wow, look at these wonderful people, and look at what this faith is doing for them. And man, I grabbed a hold of it and I loved it. And it became very, very meaningful. And within really a relatively short time becoming active in the church, I left on a mission within like 6 months. And that was a really great turning point for me as well. Again, it was part of this keeping me busy, keeping my mind busy, go. It was great as a missionary because you're just overwhelmed all day long with everybody else's worries and problems. You don't have time to think about your own, which for me was a really great blessing. I know for others that's, could really be a problem in trying to serve. I was called to go to South America, to Chile. I just had this outstanding, amazing, wonderful experience. I just felt free of these feelings, these attractions, this burden in my mind and in my heart. I felt like it wasn't there to fight off like it had been prior to my mission. I came back from my mission, came back to school. I went to Provo, to BYU, and got back into school and started working at the Provo Missionary Training Center as a teacher. That was really a great transition for me. Very busy. I could put all my energies into everybody else. I didn't have family to raise and take care of and fix and worry about. I could do all that for missionaries, in my job. I could make sure everybody was okay and going to be a great missionary and solve their problems for them. So in lots of ways it was helpful, but it wasn't really solving this issue in my mind that now just started to grow even more coming home from the mission, because now I'm influencing missionaries. Now I'm working at the MTC. I mean, that's like working at the temple. And it began to feel a bit oppressive that, man, if people here only knew, or if these type of people knew about what I was experiencing in my head and in maybe my heart too, that I'd really be rejected. So it kind of moved away from worry about family and friends knowing, high school pressures, to now I'm moving into a church realm and a new level of fear. Because it got ratcheted up a notch, because now we're in a religious arena with teachings and commandments and doctrines that are pretty specific and much more specific about this type of a situation or this type of an issue. And that really began to send the worry and concern up for me. That really kind of began an interesting time frame of moving into lots of service in the church. In fact, when I met Margaret and when we got engaged and got married, I was actually serving, when we got married, I was serving in a branch presidency in Provo. And so our first time going to church, she was sitting in the pew alone while I was on the stand. And that began, which was really been of our 33 years married.
About 30.
About 30 of them, of me being in some type of a priesthood leadership responsibility that had me in something that at least required me to be away from her on the stand or in some other capacity. And, at branch presidencies, bishoprics, I've served as a bishop. I served on a few high councils. I was a counselor in a couple of stake presidencies for about a dozen years.
It was 11 and a half years.
And then
I know exactly how long it was.
And then ultimately we had the really awesome opportunity and blessing to serve as a mission president and wife and preside over a mission of the church in Texas for 3 years. And in one way, it was super helpful because I just could be really engaged all these years of our marriage in service and concern and worry about everyone else. You're just running and worrying about everyone else and pushing back and keeping at bay your own worries, your own fears, your own problems and doubts. And so on the one hand, while it was helpful for me to cope, it was also becoming really painful and really oppressive, because with each call to serve is this tremendous conflict of, is this from God or is this from man? Because God knows I'm gay. God knows in my head, the only person I knew who knew was God, because God knows everything, right? And I couldn't hide it from him, and I knew he knew, and I knew he was pretty upset about it, and he was pretty not good with it.
You believed.
And that's part of this narrative that, man, I took and I ran with, that he was pretty displeased with this. But I was just doing my best to try and please him. And that wasn't really great, because, you can't pray enough. You can't pray this away. You can't fast this away. Believe me, I'm pretty sure I tried as hard as anybody. And it just couldn't go away. And I didn't know if he was mad about that. I just took a little bit of hope that, look, I'm trying to get it away. I'm sorry I am. I'm sorry it is. But I don't want it, and I'm doing everything I can. And so then it was just really confusing of, now here I'm called to, I was 28 and I was called to be a counselor in a stake presidency. And it's like in Provo, Utah.
And 11 and a half years later, when he was released. He was young men's president for a little while, and then at 41, he was called to be mission president. So it was intense, and as he's explained it to me, great blessing, but such a dichotomy, but also incredible pressure and worries of if these people knew. And I'm okay with God, but would I have ever been called to this if they really knew the truth about what my experiences are? That's why belief also around this needs to change, that it needs to not just be sex, 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 attached to the whole package of what he feels and experiences, because within that package of who he is are incredible leadership capabilities, which God knew and God utilized for his ends and have blessed hundreds, literally hundreds of people. And God looks on the heart and he knows. And but it was incredible, because with that blessing and that incredible love, like we loved our missionaries. I served a mission when I was younger in Denmark. In fact, we were in the MTC at the same time, him going south to people who would love him, and me going to Europe where people would go, why are you here? And it's crazy. Even the morning I left, a friend of mine who was going to Peru was there too, took a picture of me, and he's standing behind me in the background. We should actually include that picture in our little bio. So.
Yeah, we'd never met each other.
But so excited to serve this mission, knew what it meant to work with missionaries. We have multiple missionaries who are gay. And I regret a lot of the things that like my development had not developed to the point that I understood some of the things I do today. But incredible 36-month period for us, intense but beautiful. And we love them so much. And it was just, but coming home from that, immediately, he was called to be our bishop. So, 5 more years.
Now, lest anybody gets too freaked out that we've got this mission president out there who's gay, I just want to clarify, but I want to be careful how I clarify here. I wasn't out there acting out in my feelings. I'm no saint, never been a saint, last person to say I'm perfect. But I don't want anybody to be a bit freaked out that I was unworthy or inappropriate in anything at any time in a hypocritical way in my church service. I don't know that I could have ever bore that. But I want everybody to understand with each call to serve came this increased pain and fear. It's kind of like, being put on a pedestal. The pedestal just kept getting higher, and I just kept realizing how much further the fall would be.
It's interesting to me, as we were talking about this in preparation for coming and visiting with you, one of the things that just became an epiphany to me was thinking, while we get, having served in many church leaderships, the need to, and he explained it so well, protect those who you're working with, but not put you in a position to fail at a higher level. Those concerns, they're concerns that I just feel like as a normal member, we don't consider what it means to extend a call to somebody, especially in a position where they're being watched and they're in a great responsibility over other individuals. But it is interesting to me, because as we're talking about it, I'm thinking, why is what you experience give you any more propensity to sin than any of the rest of us? I absolutely don't believe that with same-sex attraction, he has any more capability to sin than I do. In fact, I know that's not true. And so I can be called to this, this, and this, and I may be adulterous in my thoughts that I never talk to anybody about. But somehow I'm less capable of the fall. And again, that's why I know for him there is a lot of belief about what happened when I was called. Was that of God or was that not? For me, I absolutely know that it was, because I've watched him. I've been at his side all those years. And you can fake things for a while, but inconsistencies will out at different points. That's why family is so beautiful, is because you can't control what you do and don't do and what they can and can't see. It's like, blah, this is who I am. And I've been right by his side during all that time. And I just want to bear witness at this point that each son and daughter of God, barring mental illness, we all have the same agency and we all have the same possibility of falling. And that a call isn't about a reward for having done really great things and therefore you're ready to be bishop. It is, I'm asking you, and it may just be for you or your family or for this person or not anybody. Like, we put meaning on things and act as if it were the reality. And I've been the queen of that. Like, what does this mean? And I want to put it in a little box, the meaning of this, and put it on my little shelf of perfectly organized, all of the doctrines and principles and understandings of my life fit neatly and beautifully. No. And now at this point in my life, I'm going, I know a lot less, but what I do know is so much more precious to me. And what I know is that no human, barring mental illness, and that is a whole other thing about agency, right? That's one of the questions I've got for God. Wow. Okay. Has no more greater propensity to sin than any of the rest of us. So, putting that in perspective in what he was worried about, and for me just going, that's not the truth. That's not an accurate belief about human nature. So
We probably should get to the really important part, coming out. Because I know that's the part everybody's really excited to hear about. Oh my gosh, what did she think? What happened? How did this go?
Can I tell it? You can tell what led up to it.
No, please. Please.
You tell what led up to it.
Oh, what led up to it? Okay, so about 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, I was released from being the bishop. And for the first time in 30 years, I didn't have something significant of a calling to be doing. Not that it was significant, but
busy.
This busy type thing was kind of suddenly gone. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, ooh, wow, what do I do with this? It was like foreign, super foreign. And got a little painful, got a little hard, because I was left with my head, left with less things to consume my energy and my emotion for someone else. And about the same time, I began to have this strange feeling, this welling up in me, that I needed to tell Margaret about my same-sex attraction. And it was like, unlike anything I've ever experienced, it's like, what? No, we're not going there. No, we're not going there. All I can say is it must have been from God, because it sure wasn't from me. Whether it was the prompting, the Spirit, or what, but it was terrifying. And I couldn't get away from it. It grew. And it grew to the point where I was afraid that at any moment, the words were just going to fly out of my mouth. It was just going to come out, and I would just be going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that. And then I was worried about controlling that if that were to happen. Until one Sunday morning, I woke up and it just came out. And it wasn't pretty.
It's interesting because of all the questions that people ask me, I find it so fascinating what they'll ask me about my experience. And we know that sharing our true story with people can be unsettling. And it hits nerves that for all of us, like when we hear somebody has just been diagnosed with cancer and it's terminal, all kinds of feelings and questions come up. Same thing, like, what does this mean for you? What's this going to mean? And did you know? Did you suspect? Were you, been asked a lot of questions that come from a place that I understand and I accept from someone, they're afraid. What if this were me? How would that be? How would I feel? It's interesting because we've gone back and forth and talked, because I know for him, part of his experience was, I keep the people around me I love safe by not talking about this and by not, as part of my upkeep with my relationships. So to know that somebody may have wondered or been watching is excruciatingly painful, because it was his, talk about provider syndrome, it was his responsibility to provide safety and protection emotionally, spiritually, and this is going to shatter and rattle that, so I can't let that happen. But I do believe that my unique experience in growing up prepared me in a lot of ways for that morning. Like, I am an insecure individual, and I have been in a relationship in a lot of ways. A lot of the work I have had has been on coming to terms with myself and accepting his love, really, being a recipient and going, he really does love me. And although I've seen it, my own insecurities would block a lot of things. So it's not a problem. I understand why he was worried to tell me for a whole bunch of reasons. And I also know that it never would have happened had God not wanted it to happen.
Let me just clarify going into it. This meant she would leave me, I would lose my children, I would lose my job working for the church, I would lose the respect and confidence of everybody who knew me, my ward, my stake, my neighbors, my friends, my siblings, and especially the devastation that I felt that would happen among our missionaries, the disappointment. Who wants to have a gay mission president? I mean, really. So this was like, here goes the first domino, and it's going to be fire. It's just going to consume. It's going to consume everything. So this was a big deal. It was a really big deal that I had no control over. It just came out. It just came out, and I couldn't stop it.
Again, the belief about what's going to happen if I talk about this. Where do you think that fear would come from? Of if I tell my true story, this is what's going to happen. So that morning, I'd been aware for some months that something was up, because I've been by his side all these years, and we enjoy each other and love each other, and we have fun together, and we love to adventure. And from the minute we met, attractions, I found this fascinating. We went to a North Star Conference Couples Summit in November, and the levels of intimacy, different types of intimacy, were delineated, and I went, oh my gosh. I thought spiritual, emotional, sexual intimacy, and that was it. There's like a huge plethora of ways that people are intimate. And as I was looking at them and dissecting them, I'm like, yep, like we are uber close. Anybody who knows us knows that. And that's why it would be unsettling on some really big terms, because like, oh my gosh, I thought they were so, well, now they can't be because he's gay, oh no, and so I knew something was up. And to be honest, there were times in my life, I'd had a couple of serious relationships before him, and there were times in my life, and I think it was mostly based on my own insecurity, that I kind of went, I don't know about this. What could this mean? And I'm, as you already know from this interview, very analytical, constantly looking at my life and what this means. But I knew something was up. And that morning, he was up, he was fidgety, he'd gone into the kitchen, and I was not quite awake, and I was aware of him being up, and he came into the door. I came into the bedroom, closed the door, and said, I need to talk to you about something. Now, that's usually me saying, I need to talk to you about something. It's never him. And sat me straight up in bed. And as he was walking around the end of the bed to come sit by the bed by me, the Holy Ghost gave me a gift where God just said, and I love this. Elder Maxwell taught us about the economy of the way the Lord speaks. He doesn't give us the journal of discourses. He just goes, and this is what he said, whatever comes out of his mouth, you need to listen to it, and you need to accept it. That was all I got. But I knew it was from him, and it completely changed my receiving capabilities for what he was about to say. And as he sat down, and I am somebody who loves to talk, so it was like, I want to rush in, I want to comfort him, and I just know to just let him get it out. And as he starts, he's actually trembling, and he's talking about his experience. And when he actually says the words, I have same-sex attraction, it's like all he can do to get it out. And all we could do was just hug each other as he wept. And I just knew at that moment, my job, my responsibility, and I'm so thankful to God for giving me this perspective so that I didn't have to guess at what I was supposed to do in that moment, was to just be with him in it. Not try to make meaning, and not try to go, well, this is going to mean for me and our family and our kids and all of our friends and our missionaries and blah, what's this going to mean? It was like, stop. Here's your focus. Just stay there. And we had a wonderful conversation, and honestly, it was the lancing of a very deep wound that was way deep and way full of poisonous beliefs and fear. And we didn't know what to do from that point. Like, we didn't really even know how to end the conversation. And so to compact this, because we've gone long enough here, it was 2 years of a bleed out for him.
Well, not a bleed out yet. If I could clarify, you would think that, oh wow, you got it out, you said it, how beautiful, oh, relief. Oh, now it's all going to be okay. Finally, nearly 50 years of this, blood, sweat, and tears is over. What it was for me was the beginning of the most terrible couple of years of my life. It just compounded everything. And this is why, and this is for me. This surely isn't everybody's experience, I'm sure. But for me, what happened was, rather than the relief, it began to up the pain. Because for the first time in my life, I had said it. I had owned it. I had admitted it. And it was in a moment of vulnerability and loss of control. It was like, it got out of me. It escaped, and I didn't do it, and it got away from me. And though it was with somebody, that I trusted and that I loved, and she handled it so beautifully, it began this terrible, what I call the crack in the dam. So I'd built this really fortified, amazing dam to hold this all back. Nobody was going to know, protected. And this was a crack. And the reason it was a crack for me is because I actually said it. I admitted it. I said the words. And I had no idea what admitting it would do to me. And it just brought on this depressive, terrible feeling of hopelessness. Because now I'm really gay. I can't hide from it. I just admitted it. And so for the next 2 years, because we didn't know what to do, which strangely enough, we were convinced we were the only two people in the world. I was convinced I was the only gay man in the church. I was the only gay married man. I'm pretty sure I'm probably the only gay former mission president or bishop or whatever. All of those things, we just were alone in this, so isolated, so alone. And I don't know how that happened, because that should never happen. Not in this gospel, not in our communities of saints. There's just no reason for this type of isolation. And we did it to ourselves. Nobody isolated us. I created the fortress myself, around myself in this. There was a big crack in it, and it terrified me now. Now it was, what's going to happen now? What if she slips up? What if she tells somebody? What if, it's kind of like the proverbial coming out of the closet. It was like there was a breach in the door. You're in there, you're locked, you have it secured. Oh no, the lock fell off. The door's not open, but the lock fell off, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do any minute? Somehow this could come open. And I just couldn't bear that. I mean, it was the loss of control, or obviously the illusion of control. I couldn't control any longer all the things that I had been doing to cope. And now the vulnerability just set in it, just notched it up to a degree that just terrified me terribly. So my response is up the prayers, up the fasting, up everything. Here we go. Faster, harder, more, because that's what you do, right? When you need more righteousness, when you need more help, you go to the temple more, and you pray more, and you read the scriptures more. And man, I went into it. But the difference now was those didn't work at all. They didn't work up here, I don't know that they ever worked in the first place, but they weren't working, which just created this loss of feeling and emotion and hope. It kind of like was draining out. I would tell her, I feel like I've run out of gas. My tank went to empty, and I was frantic to fill it up, but there was nothing to put in it, and it was running out. And I was trying to work harder, but there was nothing more that I could do. and it just ran out. I ran out of gas emotionally, spiritually. I just tanked. And it was a 2-year dive, and that got really scary, and it got really, really ugly. And at that point, and there's probably some people who are wondering, how come you didn't tell her? How come you didn't? This wasn't fair to her. How come you did this to her? That's really. I just want to reassure anybody out there who wants to bag on me for what a really rotten thing I did to her. Nobody's going to feel worse about it than I do. And I'm not looking for excuses, and I'm not trying to make anybody feel better. But the reality for me was I didn't know what I would have said when I married her, when I fell in love with her, when I wanted to marry her. I mean, good heavens, this was my best friend in the whole world. This is the person that I felt most connected with in the whole world. And, was I attracted? I don't know. I was attracted enough. I wanted to marry her. And again, when she talked about attraction, what does that look like? What is that? Was she just suddenly this beautiful goddess that I couldn't quit thinking about wanting to be intimate with her? No, that didn't happen. And, I really think Hollywood's not done us any service about what attraction really is and what love really is, because that's really messed up and that's really off. There's so many wonderful things that are attractive about her, including her beauty, including her sexuality. But man, the list goes on and on. And it moves all over the place. And I'm pretty sure mine probably does too. But there was a connection and a closeness and a love that I wasn't thinking of, I wonder if we're going to be sexually compatible. I wonder if this is going to work. I wonder who in our sex culture, or in our church culture, who goes into marriage having this definitive idea that sex is going to work. I mean, we don't practice sex before we get married. We date, and we date and date, and you better date, and you better date a long time so you know each other, and you know it, this is going to work, and you can be sure. Well, in all of that, where's the sexual compatibility? I mean, we put all of our eggs in that basket of you have to be attracted and sexually compatible, but you don't even get to know if that's really going to work. And
can I just clarify an illusion here too? Because very often people will ask me questions about sex, but they will also wonder, how is it that he can be fulfilled with you as a woman when he's primarily attracted to men? And it's an interesting thing because, again, let's normalize this because it's the reality. Aren't we all like that? How do I know, as a heterosexual woman, that he is the best sexual experience I could ever have? Like, if it's about sex, you really are. But it's like, how do you know that? So if you treat it like, I'm out for my best sex experience, and I'm going to find somebody that is so magical that it's like, I can't help myself, I'm going to rip his clothes off. You get going along in life and you figure out that honeymoon phase is beautiful, but it is not sustainable, and it is not the relationship that bonds you together. It's a different thing. Great sex is wonderful, but beautiful spiritual sex is transcendent. And so how do I know, sitting here right now, some women would say to me, well, you deserve better. You deserve someone who is attracted to you and wants you. Well, okay, of all the men that are on this planet right now, is there some man out there that could satisfy me more sexually than Travis?
No.
Grass is greener in Botswana. There's somebody over there. That illusion that Satan paints all the time of, I got to find my ultimate fulfillment, is always over the fence in another pasture. And he leads us on great journeys. I know this of myself, not from my experience with Travis, that thought of, is there some other place where I can be in actualization and fulfillment to the highest degree of nirvana, is a huge temptation, and that it's in all of this.
This 2-year period was really dark, and as I mentioned, it got to a really dark spot. She knew I was tanking. I knew I was tanking. I was just paralyzed. She was paralyzed. In our isolation, we just didn't know what to do. And very, very fortunately, there are resources out there. Anybody would run to the rescue if they just knew. And the resources always had been there, but maybe it was timing, maybe God's timing, maybe this needed to go where it needed to go. But a wonderful door opened up where an opportunity to reach out and to connect with a therapist became available. And it was quite remarkable how it happened and how quickly this therapist could see me. And I needed a lot of help immediately because it was ugly. And in that immediate need to kind of hold on to me, I had the support of Margaret right there in her concern and her worry, right there of, hey, we can do this. Come on, we can turn this around. The first part was just dealing with the fact that this is real and this needs to be addressed. And it wasn't going to be easy addressing it, but I had to address it because all of these things that we keep referring to, this narrative, these false things that we tell ourselves, that I had told myself, that I had bought off on as a little kid and then just built them. There were so many parts of this that were so messed up, so wrong in my head that I needed to confront them. I needed to face them. And they were just hugely painful because they were so true to me. I mean, I'd have fought to the end for what I believed about myself, that I was bad, that I was unacceptable to God, that this was evil and that I was evil, and that whatever might come, I deserved because of this secret, this thing that was going on in my head. That was really hard to deal with because as I would be confronted with simple things and pushed in therapy with something as simple as, God really doesn't feel that way about you. Oh, yes, he does. Oh, yes, he does. Well, let's talk through that. It was the first time in my life that these false narratives began to be challenged. And not only by my therapist, but my wife, who's suddenly becoming aware of these false narratives. I mean, this is this woman who's been with me for 30 years, and she's suddenly going, what? Wait? You think God hates you? You think you're the dust of the earth? You think you're broken? You think you're bad? I mean, it was probably not any more surprising to anybody but her. And so she's like, no. I've been here 30 years. That is a bunch of baloney. This is not true. And here's this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this that proves that contrary. And it was the first time in my life that I'm like, oh, really? Like maybe? It was tough. Some issues were really hard to work through, and others came along. I kind of look like in my mind this narrative up there that just has been built for so long. It's like pulling out the tape and going and knowing that there's all these sections of just a bunch of garbage, of false, untruth, distorted, terrible things. Again, nobody did this to me. Nobody made me feel bad. I just coped. I did the best I could. I grabbed where I could. And yes, I was influenced by society and my beliefs and such. But, I took full responsibility for really piling this on. I think that's part of the sensitivity that comes with this bundle of what it might be to be gay. And so I had to begin snipping away at that. But it was really super tough because among all of those false things, there were a lot of truths. I mean, I'd had spiritual things and things happen in my life that I cannot deny. I could never deny. There were truths and things about things that were mixed among all of this stuff that was false. And sometimes it was kind of scary because as you're clipping away, it's like, how much of this is not true? Because I wanted to get rid of the untruths. And sometimes I was ready to clip away at things that were true. And I had to stop and go, okay, where are we at here? because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. That it wasn't an all or nothing. I didn't have to suddenly step away from everything that it was dear to me, because I couldn't just suddenly say, hey, I'm gay, and this is who I am and what I need, and walk away from everything that also I am. I'm a husband, and I'm a father, and I'm a friend, and I'm a former mission president. These things matter to me. My faith mattered to me. God mattered to me. The gospel mattered to me. And so for me, it's never been this all or nothing. It was, there's so many things, and maybe that was part of the really painful part, is there's such a strong pull in both directions, and trying to go, holy cow, where? Well, you know what? I don't know how. I'm clipping away. I just want to get rid of the things that aren't true and accept the things that are true, not things that I knew were true, but new truths that I've now had to accept. I am gay, and I'm pretty awesome at gay. And there's a lot of really great things about being gay. And that's a truth. And it's like super exciting for me to be able to be honest about that. I don't have to hide the fact if I want to buy a pink shirt. I don't have to worry if somebody catches me cross-stitching. If somebody realizes I know how to arrange flowers and I'm a really great cook and I'm a pretty awesome decorator. I don't have to hide that anymore. They're truths that I can embrace and I can accept. So it's hanging on to the old truths, embracing new truths about me, and getting rid of all the crap, all the faults. And so I'm continuing to clip away. Nobody's clipping for me. My narrative, my brain, my life, my way, and I clip where I need to clip and where I know to clip. And everybody's clipping is their clipping. My clipping's not somebody else's. It's what works for me. It works for what I want. Works for who I feel I am, and where I find peace, and where I find happiness. That's been really, really super painful. I've had to face and confront some of the most difficult and super terrifying things in my life. And somehow in all of that, there's been this little glimmer of godliness. Something's divine going on here. And sometimes it was nothing more than a speck, but I could never deny that there's something bigger than me going on here. And I just tried to just stay focused on that, okay? Because what else have I got really here? I can't be crazy. What have I got? I'm struggling to make meaning of everything here, and I don't want anybody else to make the meaning for me. I need to find my own meaning, and that's tough, because when you don't have meaning and you're trying to find the truths and snip away, you're out there looking at everybody else's and seeing what they're snipping at or not snipping at, and you're thinking that's where I'm supposed to snip, or that's where I shouldn't snip, or that's what I should adopt, or that's how I do gay, or this is what it looks like. That was terrifying. That was so terrifying. It's such a vulnerable place to be in a vulnerable time for me in my life. It's a minefield. Man, was it a minefield. And I just held on to that little piece of deity, and man, I was struggling all over the place. I'm going to be honest and say, I haven't read the scriptures in a couple years. My bad.
No.
But I haven't been able to for a while. Doesn't mean I hate the scriptures. Doesn't mean I hate the gospel. Doesn't mean I've lost my testimony. And the really awesome thing is that I can admit that, and I'm okay with it, and I'm not freaked out of the fact that that's hard. It's okay that it's hard. And I don't mean to upset anybody who might be worried about that. It's going to be okay. I'm okay. But that's kind of been part of this process. I've had to kind of back away and pull away and move over from some parts that just really were killing me in shame and really tying me down and oppressing me. And as I've kind of done that, it's kind of given me a space over here to just kind of go, take the pressure off, take the pain off, and just breathe and find yourself and find where you want to go. and it'll be okay. You know, I'm gonna, you know, I've been down here, and we're over here, and it's beautiful. It's incredibly beautiful. I'm not to the point of saying this has all been worth it, because but I'm pretty sure at some point I'm gonna look back at this and going, man, this has been the best thing that God could have ever done with me, and my marriage, and my family, and my relationship with my family, and my relationship with others, and my relationship with God. Because for the first time in my life, I really think He likes me. He doesn't hate me. He's always loved me. And that's just really, really beautiful. And I'm really sorry that it's taken me 55 years to see what was always there. And I'm pretty sure it's been hard for Him to watch those 55 years. But He's getting me there, you know? He's getting me there. Ooh, I sure wish we could have done this another way. But He's getting me there. And I know He's getting me there. And we're not, you know, it never ends. You know, we never arrive. I'm just really grateful to be on this side and kind of calling back to some of those who are on that other side. Oh man, hang on. It's going to be okay. And He is there and He is with you. And it does get better. And on this other side, you'll be okay. But I know your pain and I know your suffering. I know something of it. But it's the right thing. Don't let the crazy false things that you've told yourself, or maybe others told you and you've taken on, don't let them keep you over there. Get it out, drain it out, and move on and be happy. You can be. So we're good.
We're good.
We're better than ever.
And for me, it's been interesting to be at each other's sides and have different stories about it. I have to say, I realize that not every wife's story is my story, and I have great compassion. I have a women's group that I meet with once a month, and we talk about things. And I'm hypersensitive to the fact that I was given very clear revelation at very critical points. Every Neil A. Maxwell talk, especially meeting the challenges of today, have been revelatory for me in becoming aware of truth as opposed to false narrative, and putting in things in context and perspective for me. We have become comfortable with going, today is the day we worry about. We're not going to project into the future very far. We don't have to.
Can't do anything about it
We're very
anyway.
much more comfortable with what we don't know. In fact, it's a relief to go, we don't have to worry about our eternal salvation every single second. Christ has this. He really does. There's no surprises in to Christ or God or the Holy Spirit, and they're with us every step of the way, even when we can't feel them because we're so full of our own pain. They're really still there, and they got this. They're not going to let us fail, even when we are like, how in the world can this work? How can this be? But we still got the rest of our lives to live, so.
Lots of story yet to be told. I want to just clarify one thing before we get out of this, that I'm really sensitive to the fact that some people might look at me, or already have looked at me and think, oh yeah, well, you were righteous, or you didn't go off and do crazy things, or you haven't sinned, or as if somehow that's better, or that's
or
an
that
exception,
disqualifies him from knowing the genuine experience.
or,
Somehow
well,
you really don't know.
Not even that so much, or that dismisses people who have, because whether I've done something or not, I've done it in my mind on multiple occasions, And I want to just kind of remove that part from this narrative and this conversation. It doesn't matter what someone has and hasn't done. I'm no better. I'm no better than someone who's done things or that hasn't done things. I don't see myself any better, have great compassion, great understanding. It is only by the grace of God. It is not because I'm stronger or that I'm better at white knuckling or that I'm more valiant or that I'm more faithful. In any way, I want to make sure that's clear. I am no more worthy before God than any of my fellow men friends who are on this same journey of their own, and where they're at and what they're experiencing and the ways that they're coping. I've not had some pretty coping ways. I just want to make sure that people don't get hung up on behavior. You just think about all the trouble in the world and all the ways, all the hard things that people turn to cope. No wonder alcohol and drugs and sex are just so rampant in the world. It's just really hard, and people are just reaching for anything to cope. So I would invite people to just not go there in your head with judgment or justification or I know that's hard. I know that's difficult, but please don't limit your love and your acceptance of these types of issues based upon the degree someone has done something or hasn't done something, because that's all, in my opinion, super irrelevant. It's the same pain and it's the same suffering.